Throughout history, the Bible has presented many prophecies, some straightforward, others deeply mysterious. Among these, few stand out quite like the remarkable passage in the book of Isaiah where a king is named long before he would rise to power. This king is Cyrus, a ruler from a distant land, who would come to reshape the course of history by freeing the Jewish people from exile and allowing them to rebuild their city and temple. The passage is striking not only for naming Cyrus explicitly, but also for calling him God's anointed, a title traditionally reserved for Israel's own leaders and priests. Here is the passage, from the King James Version. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure. Even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings. To open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. At face value, this prophecy appears to describe events yet to unfold, the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple, task Cyrus would famously oversee after conquering Babylon. Yet this raises an important and challenging question. Did Isaiah actually deliver this message before Cyrus was born? Or is this a passage written after the events it describes, shaped by hindsight and history? This question lies at the heart of centuries of scholarly debate. The answer carries profound implications, not only for how we understand Isaiah, but for how we interpret the nature of biblical prophecy itself. In this video, we will carefully examine this passage, considering its language, context, and significance. We'll explore the reasons why some believe it was truly a prediction from centuries before Cyrus's reign, and why others suggest it may reflect the experiences of a later time. Whether you approach this with faith, curiosity, or skepticism, the discussion around Isaiah's words to Cyrus invites us to ponder deeply the connection between divine inspiration and historical reality. So, let's begin by looking closely at the words themselves and the extraordinary claim they make. Having seen the striking prophecy naming Cyrus, the next step is to understand how this passage stands up to historical and textual scrutiny. One of the strongest points supporting the authenticity of this prophecy is the remarkable consistency of the text across major Bible translations. Whether you read the King James Version, the English Standard Version, or the New International Version, the essential elements remain unchanged. Cyrus is explicitly named and described as God's chosen shepherd and anointed one, set to subdue nations and enable the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple. This uniformity is important because it shows the passage has been preserved faithfully through centuries of transmission, leaving little room for accidental omission or deliberate alteration in mainstream traditions. But we don't just rely on modern translations. To dig deeper, scholars examine some of the oldest and most reliable witnesses to the biblical text, especially the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Septuagint, LXX, is an ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures, begun in the 3rd century BC. It was widely used in the Jewish diaspora and later by early Christians. In the LXX, Isaiah 44:28, 45:1 is preserved fully, and Cyrus's name appears clearly in Greek. The passage content aligns closely with the Hebrew Masoretic text on which most modern Bibles are based. This is significant because the LXX was produced before the time of Christ but long after Cyrus lived. The fact that the prophecy was already part of the Hebrew tradition by this period shows it was not a late medieval addition. Even more ancient is the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered near Qumran in the mid-20th century. Among these scrolls, the Great Isaiah Scroll, designated 1 Kisa, is the oldest complete copy of Isaiah, dated around 125 BC. This scroll includes Isaiah 44 and 45 verbatim, with Cyrus's name present in Hebrew, Korsh. The Great Isaiah Scroll confirms that the text naming Cyrus was part of the Jewish canon over a century before Jesus, and importantly, well before the rise of Christianity or any medieval scribal activity. It's important to highlight here that while this scroll dates centuries after Cyrus, it predates any known Christian influence on the text and demonstrates the passage's early acceptance. What does modern scholarship say about this? The scholarly community broadly agrees on the textual authenticity of this passage, though interpretations vary widely regarding its original composition date and prophetic nature. Christian scholars often view the passage as a profound example of divine foreknowledge. For instance, John Walvoord, a leading evangelical theologian, writes, "The specific naming of Cyrus in Isaiah 44 verse 28 is remarkable and indicates divine foreknowledge, as Cyrus lived more than a century after Isaiah's ministry." Similarly, J. Alec Motier, a respected Old Testament scholar, affirms, "The mention of Cyrus by name is a distinct prophetic act, not a later interpolation, testifying to the inspiration of Scripture." On the other hand, many secular and critical scholars acknowledge the passage's theological significance but argue for a different compositional history. Robert Alter, a prominent literary critic and translator, notes, "The naming of Cyrus serves a clear theological purpose in the text, but the question of authorship places Isaiah 40 to 55 in an exilic or post-exilic context." Michael D. Coogan, a well-known biblical historian, states, "The final form of Second Isaiah reflects the historical realities of the Babylonian exile and Persian restoration, suggesting it was composed during or after those events." Despite these differences, few scholars dispute that the name Cyrus appears authentically in the ancient manuscripts. The debate centers instead on when Isaiah 40 to 55 was composed and how to understand the nature of prophecy itself. Historically, Isaiah lived in the 8th century BC, while Cyrus reigned in the 6th century BC. This gap has led to ongoing discussions about whether the passage is a genuine prediction, a later prophetic reinterpretation, or a literary device crafted to give meaning to historical events. What remains undeniable is the extraordinary nature of the prophecy itself, that a foreign king is named with divine authority to fulfill a God-given mission centuries before his rise. This passage challenges us to consider the depth of biblical inspiration and the ways in which faith and history intersect. As we continue exploring Isaiah's message, keep in mind the meticulous preservation of this prophecy across time and texts, a testament to its enduring significance in Jewish and Christian traditions alike. To summarize, the prophecy in Isaiah naming Cyrus is preserved consistently across all major Bible translations, with Cyrus clearly identified as God's anointed shepherd called to restore Jerusalem and its temple. This passage is found intact in two of the most important ancient biblical sources, the Septuagint, an early Greek translation from the 3rd to 2nd century BC, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, including the Great Isaiah Scroll dated around 125 BC. These ancient texts confirm that the prophecy was well established in Jewish tradition long before the rise of Christianity and centuries before medieval times. Scholars from a wide range of backgrounds agree that the passage mentioning Cyrus was not a later addition or forgery. Christian scholars highlight the prophecy as a remarkable demonstration of divine foreknowledge, while secular historians acknowledge its theological purpose, though they debate the exact timing of its composition. What remains clear is the powerful impact of this prophecy, which uniquely names a foreign king and describes his role as God's instrument to fulfill a divine plan. This passage invites us to reflect on the profound relationship between history and faith, encouraging thoughtful consideration of how prophecy operates within the biblical narrative. Thank you for watching this exploration of Isaiah's prophecy about Cyrus. If you found it thought-provoking, please like, subscribe, and share your insights in the comments. Until next time, keep seeking understanding and truth.